What's up, everybody? My name is Street Poet. I am a creator or I am the creator of Dakota of Eternity. Um, so just took a few days off, just trying to reorient everything, try some new ideas, move stuff around. But we're back to where we started, back into the game here. Wanted to pick up with where we left off with some of what's been happening. This is old news now, but it was the last thing that really interested me before everything transitioned to the current formulations of our little a game of awakening, our little game of disclosure between white hat and dark hat forces. Really, just different sides of one single mind, just rousing itself from the depths of its own slumber into an evolutionary awakening, which is a lot of like really vague gobbledygook, just a lot of really strange ideas about um, what is reality and what is the species and what is really happening, and trying to find words to like uh, to place hands around something nebulous and otherwise difficult to describe without crushing it with the limitations of the concepts that and meanings that we would use to describe it with. Basically, whatever that is coming next that is of a level and magnitude sufficient that is beyond our current level of imagining, um, but not beyond our ability to know at least that much. So let's talk about a couple things here. Just picking up with the colonial pipeline stuff, right? So what's happening? So as we were talking about before, just how this particular vital resource conduits this company, a vital part of the eastern seaboard's resources infrastructure, providing oil, was taken down by a ransomware attack. So let's take a couple look here. I just want to read just a little bit here, just to couch this in something specific. So just this is from the Epic Times. So they're talking about in this particular story. They're talking about how their communication system is down. They're still feeling some after effects. But they were saying it's unrelated. But I like this little description of what happened here because I thought it was concise. Uh, the ransomware attackers, later identified by the FBI and White House officials as a cyber criminal group called DarkSide, said to be operating in Russia, reportedly demanded $5 million from pipeline operator to restore service, although it hasn't been confirmed by either Colonial or DarkSide. Again, the name, right? And I've actually seen differing reports as far as the amount, which is interesting that there would be any kind of variation between that. It's like, well, how much was it exactly? It's like even in the stories itself, it's like you're kind of seeding doubt, as far as how much was actually done. And in my further research about it, it's like what's really interesting about Colonial is that it's not a publicly traded company. It's actually it was started by the oil companies themselves, and it's been privately held, and it's still privately held. So just continue reading here. Colonial announced last week that it had returned service to the pipeline. The outage prompted gas and fuel shortages in Washington, Maryland, North Carolina, Georgia, and several other states, prompting Joe Biden to call on Americans not to hoard gas or panic buy fuel. And then this was really interesting. I thought DarkSide also said around the same time that it's stopping operations, saying in a Russian statement that it's interesting how they're couching that, even in the Epic Times, which my observation has been that they're probably of the most honest that I've seen out there, which is hard to find nowadays. It's hard to find honesty in so much obvious like tactical and blatant obfuscation of what is real, what is happening, and by whom whatever is occurring has been perpetrated, or where the source of why something is happening, where that came from. Um, so that the Russian stated that it lost access to part of its infrastructure and financial assets. In view of the above, and due to the pressure from the U.S., the affiliate program is closed. Stay safe and good luck. The landing page, servers, and other resources will be taken down within 48 hours. So that's really interesting in and of itself. What I found really interesting about this, and the reason why I wanted to cover this again, is so Kirsten W. She's great. She really is a firebrand. She's definitely worth spending some time just checking in what she's saying and what her intelligence reports happen to be. But what she's talking about is how dark hat sources are basically broke, and this is ever since the Ever Given slash Evergreen tanker or cargo ship that was run aground in the Suez Canal, and how the darker forces on this planet, the moneyed shadow families, how they're basically out of money. And ever since that event, which there apparently was a larger operation and was a crippling blow to them. It probably will. It just seems just in the way that it's being reported among we'll call them patriot sources, or intelligence feeds, or at least propaganda feeds, because we have to be honest, that's really what they are. But that doesn't mean that what they're saying is wrong, or that it isn't necessary. But when you take in confidence and place trust, or make your decisions as to what to believe and what to think is actually happening based off of an unverifiable source, with sources that they are that are by their nature clandestine in nature and necessarily unverifiable, that it is nothing more than propaganda. It might be the propaganda you want to hear, but it still is. But that's fine. I mean, most of our world is nothing but jingoism and propaganda, just brand making and marketing. We've we're not we're It's not only that we've mastered the lie, we've mastered the ability to sell the lie, which is a whole other level of manipulation that other worlds, I think, just, I mean, you can say of the advanced technologies of other worlds and their ability to traverse the galaxy and the solar systems and interdimensional travel, impressive technologies, the ability to have united the various peoples of their planet to make their worlds a paradise. But they ain't got nothing on our ability to bullshit ourselves. We mastered that. And that may in turn out to be a much more useful and stunning accomplishment in the great unfolding of the galactic empire to follow, that this species will largely be responsible for, a unification that is long overdue. Strange as it is, but I mean, if you think about it, everything really basically is the mind. Well, that which is immaterial will be of greater and greater consequence. It already has been, but we will place the weight and shift the burden of our civilization in the way that we conceptualize, from the most existential to the most practical matters of our existence, lean it in that direction. So, but what was really interesting is she's talking about how what was being reported to her was that this whole thing was an operation to actually get these shadowed families money. They were basically ransoming themselves for money because they can't get it anywhere else for a number of reasons. One, because Trump has frozen their assets, and through a number of actions has made it so apparently, basically, if they were to take certain actions that were basically attacks or threats to the United States, that various components of our government with access to the financial structure could seize assets, and apparently they did. So, what is the greater consequence of this? Well, so you say, well, the truth is, when we're dealing with something that is a quantum game field, we're dealing with a game that has less to do with what is physical and practical, and less tied to the specifics of an outcome. Then you say, well, then how does one calculate advantage or disadvantage? How does one plot success towards beating the game or winning the game when one is playing a quantum type of game, because it isn't going to say I have the greatest pile of gold, or I have killed more of the enemy or my opponent, or I have seized the most land, because those things are specific and material and conventional. And so this is definitely a different type of play, a different type of game, and a different type of outcome. And so when we think about what is quantum, we think about ultimately what we're talking about is potential. We're talking about an uncollapsed waveform. We're talking about um, basically a mystery box with something inside of it. But so long as we don't know what's inside of it, our mind can simultaneously hold at least two possibilities as being equally true, both that there is something in there or there isn't something in there, or that there are two different outcomes at least. And so what we're really talking about is not specific outcomes. What we're talking about is a state of mind. It's the state of mind that's more important. It's about getting more people into a specific state of mind, so that way this quantum type of play can then open up a channel to that direction. Right? I always like to say, before you can go to California, you have to know California exists. Before you can drive a car towards that direction, wherever it is in relation to where you happen to be, you have to have a map. And so the map is the current. Knowing that it exists is your mind automatically looking for the information to get you there. And it's it's the concept of a utopia. It's the more this world becomes more of a something that we do not want, or that we want to be rid of, the greater we get a conceptualization of that other place in contrast, right? So then, okay, so you don't like this world, you don't want this world, so then which world would you prefer? It's like, well, it's really hard to talk about utopia if you're numb and you bought into routine, and while um, you don't necessarily find this world to be ideal in any way, you're not actively objecting to it on a level which makes you want to make the necessary choices and to walk the difficult path ahead to be rid of this current world in favor of another one. Granted, that other world is going to be better, but to be able to shed this world, to free yourself of its opiate grip in favor of something cleaner, more elegant, and more sublimely precise, in that it frees us of our current way of thinking in favor of a different type of thinking and a different perception, right? A different way of even thinking and seeing about the world and ourselves, and the supposed separation between the two. So we're talking about that type of play. We have to say, well, there isn't anything in. I will admit, this is definitely part of me just like massaging. Like, I think that if what she's saying, that partially I'm incorrect in the way that I analyzed it, but not really, because one, we don't know. I have no reason to believe or disbelieve, or just having an honest, open conversation. I just want you to think for yourself. I just want you to consider the possibilities. I want you to be exposed to the mind that is coming, right? Because that's what my mind is. My mind is kind of like it's an ambassador. It comes from a different realm. It comes from a future instance of ourselves, where my way of thinking and looking at things will be rather mundane, unimpressive, and it just won't be remarkable in any way. It'll just be a standard. Um, so we take that way of thinking, of looking at the world and making connections in unusual ways, and we say, well, look, um, when we're playing a quantum type of game, the movements on the board are not going to be for single objectives. They're going to be objectives that have ramifications, and they touch upon multiple dimensions simultaneously. So we're not just moving a pawn into a square to get a specific outcome. We are positioning all potentialities, all other realms relative to ourselves, towards a specific endpoint or a specific goal, right? And again, it's not who has the most money or the most land, or who killed the most people, but rather state of mind. That's what we're looking for: a state of mind, and a willingness of enough people to go there, to leave this world and go there, to make that transit. Okay, so but let's go with that because it's really interesting to say that they're out of money, right? Because they own all the money is theirs. This is their game. Well, it's our game, but I mean ultimately, we they for you can say what you will of darkness, but if you want to understand the role of darkness and light in our world, then understand how our day and night work, right? We need both, right? We are composed of both, right? Our our very existence is composed of equal weights of both experiences, and throughout the year, one has greater weights or more dominance, and then the reverse happens, where the darker side has greater weight, more dominance. But this is a diurnal example, right? A day night. It is an example of time on our planet, a cycle of 24 hours. It is an example of something which is metaphorically true on a psychological level. Our minds literally are composed of this dance of light and dark as well. And so we can say that darkness is doing something which is abhorrent, negative, evil, that they are taking advantage of us, that they must be thwarted, they must be destroyed. But it's not that simple, is it? It's not that simple just to simply say we should only have day or only night, right? It's not that simple. I don't know. Most people are not really ready for that kind of idea or that kind of thinking. But the truth is, it's just one single mind, not a mind that you prefer and a mind that must be destroyed, but a mind that must find its own balance, that must come into its own awakening, its own clarity. There's a lot more to the idea of light and dark, but and we'll get to those ideas later. Suffice it to say, the most important thing to know right now is that they're both necessary and that they're both equally lies and they both are equally leading to something more truthful. But that path of truth must lead through lies. So if we go with this idea that they're out of money, then uh, this is an interesting story that really shows that one, the dark hats are losing. Or the black hats are losing because this is not something you would see more of a coalescence of resources, not a dividing. You would see certain individuals getting richer, not a redistribution, right? You wouldn't see institutions fall necessarily, or especially financial institutions. You would see them gain more prominence and more dominance, right? You would see more mergers, larger companies, rather than companies splitting apart, selling off their assets, or heroes of the recent planned disease, proponents of various medicines suddenly filing for divorce. Like, this is a really interesting one. This one really was, I think, a lot of people got a lot of amusement out of it. So let's just read the story. So this is from Forbes. Melinda French Gates is now hundreds of millions richer after new stock transfer from Bill Gates. So they're getting a divorce. Bill's investment vehicle, Cascade Investment, transferred 851 million worth of shares of farm equipment maker Deere and Company to Melinda on Thursday. Bill already transferred 2.4 billion worth of stock in four companies: Canadian National Railway, car dealership group AutoNation, Mexican Coke bottler Coca-Cola FEMSA, and Mexican broadcaster Grupo Televisa to Melinda on Monday, May 3rd, the same day the pair announced their divorce. So she's now worth 3.3 billion. Well, she was at this time. I'm sure she's worth far more than that. It's really interesting to find out. So they're saying he's the fourth richest person in the world. It's far richer than that, but whatever. It's interesting when they start to talk about, they start to air what it is. These people who are these massive players on the field, these titans of industry, they're almost archetypes in themselves. They're celebrities, right? When you start to see what it is they've been up to, when they start talking about it, it's like, why would this person be interested in Latin American, like, networks, television groups? Why would they be interested? Why would they be interested in railway, right? Why would a person who built their fortune on software be interested in farming equipment and medicines to third world countries and their positions on global disease events, right? Why? Where's their interest? Of course, you do a little bit of research on this person, and he's not who he says he is, and his rise to power and fame was planned. It was like everything else on this planet was planned. Anyone who still believes in coincidence in this world is being dangerously naive. Everything is planned. Everything is part of a plot. Everything has been meant up, at least until recently, towards continued consolidation of power, and the uh, the increased efficacy of the enslavement and indoctrination of the global populace into greater perfections of their own unquestioned compliance to an oppressive regime. They did a great job. They do great work. I mean, you can complain about what they're doing, but they they really do great work. They know exactly how to oppress people, but more importantly, they know how to teach them to oppress themselves. The most effective jail is the one where the prisoners hold the key to their own jail cells. They don't want to leave. So this was interesting here. So there's a connection to Epstein. So in their divorce petition, Bill and Melinda said their relationship was irretrievably broken, but the pair hasn't said exactly what prompted the split. Mysterious divorce out of nowhere, a supposed hero and new symbol of a liberal left agenda of those who are interested in continuing this farce of this global disease suddenly has a split, right? There's a break, and suddenly there's a transfer of assets, a massive transfer of assets. But if you think about it, if it were not being couched in the context of this spin of saying there's a divorce, right? If it wasn't being couched in that, right, then there would be what massive transfers of wealth from one person to another, and people would be asking why. Why are they doing that? What is the motivation? But in this case, well, it's because they're getting a divorce, right? Why? Why? The question is why. But so the connections with Epstein, whatever. It's. I'll just read a little bit more. Um, Bill's meetings with deceased sexual predator Jeffrey Epstein came to light, the Wall Street Journal first reported. Additionally, a spokesman for Bill admitted he had an affair with a Microsoft employee in 2000. Blah blah blah. It's all bullshit. It doesn't matter. It's just cover story. It's spin. So this leads to continuing concepts. They're out of money. Cover stories to do massive uh, reassignments of the wealth that they do have to pay themselves to continue funding their operations because they're no longer getting their traditional revenue streams because of Trump and because of the White Hats and the number of actions that have been taken. They no longer have the necessary resources they need to continue their plans, but they can't stop. Right? Their plans are built upon their plan is survival, and their survival is only achievable through dominance, and only through the specific plans that they've laid in place, which need massive amounts of funding and resources in order to accomplish. Um, can they possibly survive? Whereas the White Hats are kind of in a position where all they have to do is just stranglehold, cut off, distract, and muddy the waters as far as to make it unclear as to who has been turned, who has been compromised, and who is who they say they are. So people start acting less in a coordinated fashion and more in their own self-interest. And so basically, it's playing the black hat mentality against itself, right? When they see that they no longer have a coalition of dominance, when they no longer see that they have uh, um, a coordinated effort, then they will begin to not only protect themselves against those the white hats, but they will also begin to divide and protect themselves against all threats, which they will see as everybody, not just the other side. There are no other sides. It's a completely asymmetric kind of gameplay. So this leads into all of that idea, right? So suddenly out of nowhere, Warner Media is being sold, right, or merged with Discovery, right? So we're talking about creating basically one, the failure of this massive merger for AT&T, which the Justice Department fought, and finally it was approved. And then just after a couple of years, a complete and utter collapse. Like, this is a massive, massive failure. This isn't a small thing, right? This is someone shedding a prized jewel, right? This is a complete reversal of a plan. This is someone's very this like a decades long ambition, a highly coordinated effort, completely falling apart, blowing up in their face. And so now it's just triage, right? This is basically forcing the enemy to retreat, and so to move available resources, and to basically reform the line, to double back and create a new line for themselves where they can continue to protect themselves and to at least sustain themselves, if not continue to, basically regroup and then continue forward. So let's just read some of this here. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and I just that's annoying. Okay, some of Discovery Incorporated's biggest shareholders are getting a premium price for their stakes in the media company under the deal that combines it with AT&T Incorporated's media business securities filing show. Let's see. The companies have yet to file formal registration statements detailing the transaction, but available details show the degree to which insiders are poised to benefit from a deal that shook the media and telecommunications landscape on Monday when AT&T said it would spin HBO, CNN, and the rest of its Warner Media division and combine it with Discovery. CNN, right? That is definitely Mockingbird Media, right? That is definitely a propaganda mouthpiece of the establishment. And so, but it's not, it was definitely going to be sold off already. It's all these other valuable assets, all of these media properties like Superman, Batman. We're talking about the Matrix movies. We're talking about the relationships with various directors and producers and media stars. We're talking about channels. We're talking Cartoon Network. We're talking about massive properties, a massive library, a catalog of basically, at least a quarter or a third of at least between a quarter and a third of all of Hollywood's history. Massive amounts of influence. We're talking about a massive, massive media player, and the media is incredibly important when it comes to being able to maintain order and manipulation on this planet. It's probably the most important weapon that is available in an information war, right? In our current example of civilization, the media is probably the most powerful. The ability to control a message, to disseminate a preferred narrative, and to organize factions of thought into easily digestible examples of of those who are in the mainstream and those who are on the fringe, and what is considered right think, right? So it's perfect. You can't do better. Like, I mean, we're talking about a level of sophistication where it's one thing to force someone to do something by threat, to put them up against the wall and to tell them you better do such and such or think such and such. But when you can get them to do it on their own, and when you can get them to pay for it on their own, and you can create whole industries of increased oppression and increased distraction, where they, like movies or television or news organizations, when you can get them to support their own propaganda and prefer it, and inform brand allegiances with it, to say, oh well, I love this channel, or I love this newscaster, or I love this star, or I'm a fan of this studio, to get them to form preferences to their to torturers. It's almost like people, in some kind of torture camp, starting to recognize, who's doing the torturing on a daily basis, and begin to root for them like their favorite athletes on the soccer field or on the football field, saying, yeah, I'm gonna wear this torture person's, jersey, because they're really great at, I don't know, getting people to cry, or, pulling fingers off or whatever. That's brand loyalty. It's like getting a preference for whomever is torturing and controlling you. So this is an example. One last thing to say about this, because I know this has been a long time, but and I'm just trying to get back into the groove of it, because honestly, like I did a lot of changes to my whole situation here, just trying to figure things out, trying to get it, more elegant, a little more, a little bit more just professional, trying to head in that direction at least. It's really interesting, we're talking about the Colonial Pipeline situation and how completely out of nowhere, nobody saw it coming. It's like in a supposedly random world where nothing is contrived and nothing is planned and everything is completely, we live in a random world, and its realness, its authenticity is born of the fact that, every day we don't know what's going to happen and nobody knows what's going to happen. We just all arrive at the moment of discovery equally, and we all respond to it authentically, and to the best of our abilities, use our own inner star, our own guiding light, the principles that we tell others and we tell ourselves that are important to us and the world that we like to see, and then we respond sincerely to whatever random event has occurred, and then we all step towards that goal. And if we're a leader, then we convince others that where we're headed is where we should all go, or I know where you want to go, and I'm going to help you get there. Either way. Um, but when you see something like this, where Biden, where they're talking about the Biden entity and his administration, they were ready to go with an executive order which seems responsive to a completely random attack to the Colonial Pipeline. So here, I'll just read just a little bit of this here. Talking about what the proposal has to say, how it collects information, how about cyber attacks, increases transparency, but really that's just double speak for just saying we're gonna continue to collect more private information for the purposes of analyzing the actions of the populace, of the citizenry, telecommunications, pipelines, anything with technology. They're basically saying, we, in the interest of protecting our infrastructure, protecting our ways of life, protecting our financial system, we are going to collect more information. It's like a little mini version of the Patriot Act. We're doing this for your own good. We're taking away your civil liberties because we need to protect you, or would you rather live in fear and doubt and uncertainty? So let's just read a little bit of this here. Let's see, talking about this order. Order establishes a new multi-agency cybersecurity safety review board to review incidents and mandates that federal systems log cybersecurity incidents and use multi-factor authentication and stronger encryption. The order also eliminates any contractual barriers, see how they put that in quotes, to IT services, provides informing the government of breaches, and requires providers to share breach information that could impact government networks, which is just another way of saying everything, because the networks are all tied together. They're not divided. The order also seeks to mandate new baseline security standards for development of software sold to the government, basically making sure they have the backdoors and the encryption key so they can get in, requiring developers to maintain greater visibility into their software. So yeah, we can just check and see, we can spy easily, without having to go through any kind of like kangaroo court version of civil liberties, the FISA courts or anything like that. It's like, yeah, we just do whatever we want. But anyhow, this article is just talking about how civil libertarians and privacy-minded technologists are uneasy about how much power the administration is granting itself, and the pretext for it, saying that this is all in response to this incident, but they've been supposedly crafting this executive order since the early weeks of the administration, and it really had nothing to do with it. How about that? They just happen to have an opportune situation where they can drop this little piece of self-granting legislative power. It's not legislative power at all, but they're just granting themselves more executive privilege to spy on Americans. That's basically it, or they would like to, at least. So that's all just really interesting, just like a good way to close it. The only thing that I really wanted to say last, just getting everything back. There's a lot really going on, like the Arizona audits, the audits happening around the nation. Is that um, this isn't? I mean, right now at this stage of the game, I don't think it's inaccurate to say that this really is about the dark hats and the white hats, about cabal and shadow family power versus open society, like an authentic, real world where the wills and desires of average people, not just Americans, but average people, have a place at the table. What they want is taken into account. Um, I, I think that's definitely still true, but I think it's increasingly going to become more true that what this is really about is those who are awake and those who are asleep. It's not about left or right. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's not about who you support or who you defend, but those who are awake and those who are asleep. And that ultimately, um, thinking for yourself, questioning, and paying attention to what you're seeing with an open mind is leading towards becoming awake, and a life where you refuse to take upon information that goes against your worldview, continuing to be stuck in the routine, the numbness of your day, the distractions of your life in its petty ways, and basically just refusing to question anything, just simply taking verbatim and unquestioningly whatever trusted media source you choose. Um, that is remaining asleep, and you can see how, in the way that has been worded, that you can easily be on the right side and still be asleep, and you can be on the left side and be awake or waking. So just a couple things to consider. So um, my name is Street Poet. I'm the creator of Decode of Eternity, a series of stories based upon the world that we're heading to, how to get there, um, and the worlds that we inhabit, the the truth of things as they really are, and its disclosure to us. I'm interested in the future, and I'm interested in helping as many people get there and to awakening minds to what is really happening so they can enjoy this unique moment in history, this unique moment in the galactic memory, um, as our reality is nothing but a remembrance of what once was, but to us, is still unfolding. Hi, laters.